Did you get MidSouth TV at the time too, or were you just getting like the special events there?
We got, that Saturday afternoon slot. I
Mm,
think it revolved sometime because I became a pretty big Bill Watts fan, which looking back, that kind of my sweet spot as far as for me physically.
mm,
Um, Bill Watts, got to be friends with before he passed, Dr. Death. Stan Hansen and I have gotten to sit and talk a lot. Those guys were just rugged, rough, physical, very athletic because I'm sure, as you know, but some of those guys all those guys played college football. Dr. Death was a collegiate wrestler.
yeah,
Um,
studs.
got a chance. What was it? The New Jersey Generals got to play some NFL. So all those rugged guys. Bill Watts got some pro experience. So that kind of fits what I do because I'm not a fancy wrestler at all. So we that kind of became a rotating thing. We got some Mid-South, we got some Georgia Championship Wrestling. Later on, of course, that's going to become WCW later in the transition. But I got a little bit of everything, and it was a great spot to be in.
Mid-South was such an interesting territory because, as you mentioned, you had these, these hard-nosed brawlers like Hacksaw, people like that you wouldn't want to mess with. And then they ended up getting, some of the Memphis guys, the Rock and
Yep.
Roll Express and, the Midnight Express. And they just, they're incredible. Like, as a fan, I can look at their stuff and just be like, and I love the contrast, though, because
Right.
if you just had all of that, it would be great. But by having a mix of both, it made such for an entertaining product.
Well, and to his credit, I've only met, well, I guess I've met Bill Watts 2 or 3 times. He definitely wouldn't know me, but to his credit, he recognized talent. Talent is talent. I mean, he pushed those guys to the moon, and I'd still say maybe maybe one of the best tag matches I've ever seen historically. And there's been a bunch, but you just said it. It's Midnight and Rock and Roll, and um, I mean, you throw the Fantastics in there, but man,
Yeah.
those so good. And you could tell those guys had been in the ring 1,000 times together. And it was like, I am an old school wrestling fan. I watch when I'm watching wrestling, it's usually one of the things that we just talked about. And I mean, I've watched it 12 times, but there's a match between those two tag teams where they legitimately work the hair pull for 5 or 6 minutes. They they tease an over the ropes spot for 4 or 5 minutes and pay all those off. And fans right now, some of those would be thinking, "Oh, that sounds terrible." Fans went nuts on everything they did. They did it to perfection. Everything meant something. It was perfect timing. And I mean, I just watched those and learned. And I don't know now today if fans have the patience to see that live
Hmm.
because most of the time you're given 10 to 12 minutes in a singles and maybe 15 in a tag, and those guys went 30 minutes with Cornette at ringside, and the fans were just into every single thing, and that's the joy of wrestling.